The Birdie Board Podcast is brought to you by the Birdie Board app, the easiest way to track matches, scores, and handicaps with friends. Now, here's your host, Corey, with another episode of the Birdie Board Podcast.
Welcome to episode 28 of the Birdie Board Podcast. This is a pretty exciting week. This is the first major of the year, the Masters tournament, which starts tomorrow. Usually I do these podcasts on Monday, but I was traveling for Easter weekend, so I'm recording today on Wednesday, just a couple of days after, but it works out well because it really kicks off the next 4 days, which is going to be the Masters tournament. And I was thinking about what type of episode should I do to kick off this Masters tournament? And there are endless episodes, I think, that talk about the matchups and who's playing and things like that. And I thought, let's touch on that. But I thought what would be also interesting is to talk about just the Masters tournament in general. Things like when is it? What's the history of it? When are some of the key tee times happening? Things like that, just to try to differentiate this podcast a little bit from reading a sports article on ESPN. So what I did is I pulled up a bunch of information about the Masters tournament. I've read about it. I've kind of learned about it myself. And I'm just going to try to share, as much as I can about it to try to fit into this episode. So let's talk about just some of the logistics of the Masters tournament. So if you don't know, the Masters tournament is the first major of the year. It's always this time of the year, and it's always played at a course called Augusta National. And we'll get more into the history of that in a little bit. Like other golf tournaments in the PGA, it has the same structure where it starts on Thursday and goes through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you're looking to watch the Masters, this is really unique. So you can actually either watch the Masters at masters.com or download the Masters app. Compared to other tournaments and even other majors, this is unique where a lot of the other tournaments are blocked behind streaming services or TV packages or something like that. You don't need any of that to watch the Masters. I'm not sure if you knew that or not. You can just watch it on masters.com or download the Masters app. If you keep up with golf Reddit, there's always a recurring joke that it's that time of the year, because what people typically do is they download the Masters app for these next 4 days and then they delete it afterwards. So that's kind of where you can get caught up on it. The actual prize money for the tournament isn't announced until during the tournament. So we can kind of try to guess what it might be based off of last year's numbers. So last year, the whole prize bucket was $21 million. The winner, who was Rory McIlroy last year, earned $4.2 million as the winner. Rory McIlroy is probably the biggest storyline going into the Masters week because he is the previous winner. And his win last year was a little bit more significant. And why it is because it was his career Grand Slam. A career Grand Slam in golf is when you've won each of the 4 majors. So that was the only major that Rory McIlroy was missing to complete his Grand Slam. So he completed that last year. So the question is, can he do it again? That's one of the top storylines. So what is the history of the Masters tournament? So the Masters tournament has pretty much always been played at the Augusta National course. Unlike other majors throughout the PGA, the Masters tournament happens in Augusta, Georgia at the Augusta National Golf Club every single year. The length of the course is about 7,500 yards, which is significantly more than what it was even 20 or 30 years ago. It's always played in April of every year. It is one of the more southern major tournaments typically, and I mean southern as in southern continental United States. And the history behind that is because of the heat that as we get further along in the summer, these tournaments tend to be played more north, because if they're played too far, or these majors tend to play more north, because if they're played too far south, it just ends up getting a little hot. The Augusta National Golf Club was originated by a guy named Bobby Jones, who wanted to build a golf course after his retirement from the game. So Bobby Jones was actually a PGA golfer, and a pretty decent one at that. He was born in 1902 in the Georgia area. and he died at the age of 69 in 1971. So he was a professional golfer. He had a career Grand Slam himself, and he's kind of one of the originators of the Augusta National Golf Club. In Augusta, Georgia, there was a plant nursery, and Jones said he was looking to find a place like that and convert it into a golf course. So he did that, and he hired Alistair McKenzie to help design the course, and the work began in 1931. It formally opened in 1933, but unfortunately the course designer died before the first Masters tournament was played. It took a little bit before the course was actually used in the PGA. So there was a petition that for the USGA to hold the US Open at this new golf course in 1934, but USGA originally declined it, noting that it was too hot in the Georgia summers. And if you know, the US Open is always played a little later in the year, so this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is it's one of the more southern courses played. So US Open in that year was played in August. August summer in Georgia is brutal, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So they initially declined it. So a little later, they had their first tournament called the Augusta National Invitational Tournament, as the Masters was originally known. So the original name of the tournament was that. And it began on March 22nd, 1934. So right around this time of the year. And the first winner was a man named Horton Smith. And he took a prize pool of $1,500 as the winner of the first Masters tournament. Funny enough, this is contrary to how we think about the club today. They couldn't afford to pay the $1,500 to the winner. So the club kind of got the 17 Augusta National members together, and they personally chipped in to pay the winner's prize. The tournament didn't even have chairs at the time. They borrowed chairs from 2 local funeral homes, and they printed programs out for all the patrons that attended the tournament. The tournament passed that year in 1934. It only cost $2, and the front 9 and the back 9, also known as the first 9 and back 9, first 9 and second 9, are actually reversed in the beginning days. As a result, though, of this first tournament, the Augusta National Golf Course gained about 20 new members, and this was really what helped the course start to take some shape and actually gain some traction. The present name, the Masters Tournament, was adopted officially in 1939, and it had been used in the first tournament and sometimes even called by newspapers as the Masters Open, which isn't really the case anymore. Open implies that it's just open to anyone. We see that in like the US Open, but that's not the case anymore with the Masters Tournament. It's invite only. So through the 1950s to 60s, the Masters still wasn't very heavily attended yet, but it was more of a known golf tournament. So people could buy tickets to the tournament the day of each round, and that's kind of how it worked early on. During this span, though, we saw a lot of popularity increases. This is when we saw people like Arnold Palmer playing, Gary Player, and Jack Nicklaus. They really dominated the Masters between the 1960s and the late 1970s, and this really helped propel the Masters tournament even further along. So then we get to like the 1980s through the 2000s, and we all know what starts to happen near the end of 1990s. That's when Tiger Woods started to come into the picture. By 1993, a 4-day badge was raised up to $100. So we're really starting to raise up in price, and this really is showing how popular the tournament has become. By 2001, just less than 10 years later, it rose to $125. And then by 2009, we're starting to see these prices of these crazy Masters tournament tickets that are like $200, $250 by 2012, $300 by 2015. In 2023, it was reported that a 4-day badge was $450, and then the recent reports for this year is they're $525, and that's just like the lowest number. And this is important to note is like a unique part of the Masters tournament. So if you wanted to get a ticket to the Masters tournament, it's not as easy as it would be another PGA event. You actually have to get invited. It always makes me laugh when there's setups like this. Is like you're invited to pay me money, and that's basically what the Masters tournament is you're put on a list and you just hope your name gets drawn, and if it does, then you can go ahead and purchase tickets. It's one of the hardest majors to get a ticket to every year. So there's a lot of traditions that surround the Masters tournament. The first one is the Augusta National Women's Amateur final rounds, or the Friday and Saturday before the actual Masters tournament. On Sunday, there's a drive, chip, and putt contest, so the Sunday before the Masters tournament. And this was really important because in 2013, there was a big push for promoting the sport among the youth. And I think that was so important and so critical to our game of golf. So they dedicate a whole day just to the youth for drive, chip, and putt. Monday is what's called an amateur dinner, but Monday is also when the pros start doing their practice rounds. Tuesday is a really, really unique one. It's called a champions dinner. And what it is a tradition that was started by Ben Hogan. And the champion dinner is hosted by the previous year's champion. So this year's champion dinner was hosted by Rory McIlroy. And they published out their menu for the dinner, and previous winners of the tournament are invited, and then also a couple of the executives of the Augusta National Golf Course are also able to attend. On Wednesday, there's a par 3 contest, and then finally Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is when you're going to see your actual Masters tournament. I thought it was pretty cool to hear that Ben Hogan was the one who first hosted a dinner in 1952. If you haven't read Ben Hogan's book, it's a really cool book about how to swing the golf club. And it's crazy that you read that book and there's so many topics and ideas from the 1950s and 60s or whenever he published it that are still applicable today. It's been one of my favorite golf books. I definitely would recommend it. The actual tournament has a tradition of an opening tee shot. It's usually an honorary person. Some of the more legendary players that have done it are like Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player. These are people who are just take the first tee shot and it really like kicks off the tournament. There's a tradition among the caddies. Caddies wear all white jumpsuits. Sorry, that was a bit of a tongue twister. With a green hat and white shoes. Their player's name is always across their back, and that's just tradition. The defending champion gets a caddy number 1, and then that doesn't say their caddy is assigned to them. It just says that each caddy gets a number, and then after that, it's based off of when they arrive or when they register for the tournament. A unique aspect of winning the Masters tournament isn't that you get only a trophy. Now, there is a trophy that is handed out to the winner, but what's really unique is the green jacket. And there's some cool things that I learned about this green jacket as I was reading about the Masters tournament. So this was formally awarded since 1949 and then informally awarded to champions prior to that year. So it's been around for quite a while. And it's the official attire worn by members of the Augusta National while on club grounds. Each winner of the Masters ends up becoming an honorary member, so it's kind of like, here's a jacket, here's your initiation to our club. The recipient of the green jacket has to keep their jacket actually at the club, which I didn't know. Winners can take their jacket home after their victory, but then they need to return it back to the club whenever they are present on the club grounds. So I didn't know that. I didn't realize that it could only be removed by the reigning champion. That was pretty cool, and then it ends up getting returned back. There was once in 2017, there was a green jacket that was found in a thrift store. in 1994, and it was sold for $139,000, which was interesting. So they do get trophies, as I mentioned. They kind of get a smaller trophy, the actual winner, but there's a real trophy, like a huge one that's kept on the Masters grounds. So it weighs 130 pounds, and it sits on a 4-foot high base, and it resides permanently at the Augusta National clubhouse. When there's a winner, their name is engraved into this permanent trophy, but they also get a replica of it, and then along with the green jacket. When you win a Masters as a professional, you get a lot of perks for doing it. One of the biggest perks you get is called a player invitational. What a player invitational is basically a bunch of privileges the professional golfer gets for tournaments in the future. So Master champions are automatically invited to play in other majors. So they automatically get invited to the US Open, the Open Championship, and the PGA Championship for the next 5 years. The only exception is if there's an amateur winner, unless if they actually turn pro within the next 5 years. Also, every player earns a lifetime invitation to the Masters. So there was a lot of discussion this year, is like Tiger Woods going to be playing in the Masters? The answer is no, based off of his recent car crash. But the thought that probably went through a lot of players' minds is like, he hasn't played golf for years. How is he even qualified? Well, he's qualified because he's won the Masters recently, and that's what you see with a lot of players like Phil Mickelson and otherwise. There is a tradition of honoring amateur golf, as we kind of alluded to with the youth golf. It's just an ongoing tradition. It's a really cool concept, and that's backed by the Augusta National Golf Course and then the Masters tournament. So what that means is the winner of the U.S. Amateur tournament actually plays with the winner of the Masters from last year, so Rory McIlroy. So who's that going to be this year? Well, his name is Mason Howe. He was born on June 28th, 2007, so he's just 18 years old. And he won the 2025 U.S. Amateur tournament, and he became the third youngest winner in the history of the tournament to win. So he qualified to play the Masters tournament, and guess who he gets to play with? Rory McIlroy. So that's a pretty cool opportunity for Mason Howe, if you ask me. There's a lot of just cool little things, I would say, too. The concessions are really unique. The prices, they keep low, unlike other sporting events, so that's cool to see. There's also some unsaid rules. For example, they're not called fans at Augusta. They're called patrons. That's a rule that like the broadcasters follow. So that's a lot of just the cool stuff and logistics and history around the Masters tournament. Hopefully you guys like that. Another cool stat I see here is like the length of the course. I kind of alluded to that earlier. In 2022, the length was about 7,500 yards. If you go back to the 1940s, it was 6,800. I think that just shows how much longer the drives have gotten and how the course has adjusted to that. All right, so let's talk about some of the key tee times. Maybe you're looking for a particular golfer. So I'm just going to go over the first round tee times, call out a couple key golfers in case if you're interested in watching. So on Thursday, the earliest tee time is 7:40 a.m. The biggest name I would say in the first maybe 2 hours, so up till 8:50, is Max Homa. He plays at the 7:50 tee time. Your next biggest name would probably be Bubba Watson. He plays at 9:02. And then your 9:19 has a pretty good group with Cameron Smith, Sam Burns, and Jake Knapp, all playing pretty well. At 9:31, you can watch Keegan Bradley. And then 9:43 is a fun one. We have Dustin Johnson, Shane Lowry, and then Jason Day all in the same group. You'll see a lot of your best tee times here right in the middle of the day, I think. 9:55, you get Patrick Reed, Tommy Fleetwood. And then 10:07, one of my favorite golfers, Bryson DeChambeau, and then Matt Fitzpatrick. And then Xander Schauffele, I always say his last name wrong. 10-19, Colin Morikawa plays, who had a really strong start. And then the big one, and definitely going to end up being a featured group, is 10-31, Rory McIlroy and Cameron Young. And then our U.S. champion, amateur champion, Mason Howell. It's going to be cool to see how the amateur plays. You always are rooting for the underdog like that. Later in the day, at about 11:27, we have Wyndham Clark. Zach Johnson plays at 11:39. Adam Scott plays at 12:03. And then we get a lot more names we don't recognize as much. JJ Spawn plays at 12:56. He's coming off of a big win last week. John Rahm, big name over in Live Golf, and has expressed that he is not going anywhere, is playing at 108. And Chris Gotterup, who's been playing really well, is also playing at 108. 120 has Jordan Spieth, Justin Rose, and Brooks Koepka. I think that's going to be a pretty popular group to watch. And I think that's probably about it for some of the key names. So hopefully some of those names stuck out to you. Oh, Justin Thomas, 132, and then the last tee time of the day is 156. So that's just round one, but mark your calendars. Remember, you can watch it on the Masters website. You don't necessarily need to wait for it on ESPN or any other streaming service. You can just watch it right away. Round one starts at 8:30. Round 2 starts at 8:30. Round 3 on Saturday starts at 10 a.m. And then the final coverage also starts at 10 a.m. This is all the news in the golf world right now. If you go on any golf website, they're going to be talking about the Masters. This podcast is no exception. So hopefully the unique take of approaching the Masters as I did on this podcast was really interesting. It was really interesting to me to learn about things. I also recommend, if you want to play golf this weekend, get your tee times early. They're going to fill up really, really fast. I got a tee time for Saturday morning. I booked it with some friends, I want to say like late Monday, so almost a full week out, and there was only 2 tee times available during the day at like a middle of the tier course. So they're going to go fast. But everyone's starting to get excited for golf. The first major of the year, it's obvious that people are going to get excited. If you want to, go ahead and try Birdie Board out this weekend. It's great to host tournaments and just multi-weekend rounds. And even if you're just going out to play 18, it's really good for that too. I'm definitely going to be using Birdie Board myself with my friends this weekend to help host a little bit of a game going on. I think I'm going to try to suggest Stableford. As I said in some of the other podcasts, starting the season off with more forgiving play, it really helps, and I still am very rusty, especially with my chipping. So Stableford helps that, because the worst you can do is 0 points, whether you get a double bogey or quadruple bogey. Really good for your score. I did play last weekend, and I kept score legitimately for the first time this year. But I still am trying to ease myself back into it. So I played off of the forward tees. So, historically it's known as senior tees, but I'm trying to push the idea that tees should be played off of your handicap. So I played the senior tees, and I enjoyed it. I shot well over 100. I scored it though like I was playing on the PGA. Assessing penalties, no redo shots. And honestly, the worst part of the whole day was just my chipping. I felt like I had like 2 chips around every hole and a lot of blades. But as I talked about last week, chipping and a lot of shots that just require feel, they are the slower shots to come at the beginning of the season as you're kind of getting back into it. So I definitely think I'm going to be a lot better this next round. So that's it for this episode of the Birdie Board Podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Birdie Board Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and share it with a friend who loves golf as much as you do. And before your next round, grab the Birdie Board app, free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, and let it handle the scoring while you enjoy the game.